Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast brought to you by Briar-Greaves Insurance. Protecting your assets starts with a company you can count on. So whether it's auto, homeowners, flood, boaters, or business insurance, Briar-Greaves Insurance are the people to talk to. So go to briargreavesinsurance.com or give them a call at 813-876-4166. That's 813-876-4166. It is a Tuesday edition of the Pewter Report podcast. So we're going to stick with the draft theme. Yesterday, we talked about 5 likely targets that the Bucs are going to be looking at in the first round. Today, we're going to go in a little bit of a different direction, talk about some prospects that might be a little shocking or head-scratching if the Bucs do end up taking this player in the first round. So we'll break down a couple players, answer some questions and comments, and talk about some top 30 visits that the Bucs have been reportedly having as well. So I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is my co-host of the show, Scott Reynolds. Scott, how we doing?
Doing good, Matt. Hello, Pewter people. How are you? Excited for another draft episode, and we're going to have Mykel Pratt on the show tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Bucs backup quarterback who's vying for that number 2 job with Kyle Trask to back up Baker Mayfield. Then on Thursday, Jason Light takes to the podium to tell us absolutely nothing about the draft with his pre-draft press conference. Although, sometimes he will drop some nuggets that are pretty interesting. So regardless, we're going to break it down for you on Thursday's show at 4 o'clock. So buckle up. We have more draft talk. Plus, we'll talk some current Buccaneer news as well. If you have any questions about the current team, we're happy to delve into that as well. If you want to super chat us or ask us some questions, happy to answer that. But Mykel Pratt will be here tomorrow talking about Baker Mayfield, Josh Grizzard, his battle with Kyle Trask, how his first year in Tampa was, what it was like to go through the draft process last year. So lots of fun stuff in store this week. So before we get into today's show, a couple more names were revealed. Not terribly shocking in terms of who they were. But let's get to it, Matt. The Buccaneers had a couple more official 30 visits that were known. Matthew Golden, the wide receiver out of Texas, who interviewed with the Buccaneers formally at the Combine. That doesn't come as a surprise to have him in. We talked about him a little bit yesterday, and it's funny because he very well could have been that 6th guy. He could have been that 6th man off the bench. When it comes to the players that the Buccaneers might pick, we think it's going to be a defensive player in the first round. We spent yesterday's show kind of talking about those options. But you know what? If the right guy isn't there, Matthew Golden might be the pick, man.
He is, to me, he is my favorite wide receiver prospect in terms of, first round guys, things of that nature. I would love his fit with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because it's a little bit different than what they already have. And certainly they have fantastic talent. I'm not here to besmirch any of the greatness that Mike Evans and Chris Godwin have brought to this team or the promising start that Jalen McMillan has had, again, by any means. But Matthew Golden, with his ability to be a deep threat down the field, his ability to make some big catches on third down, the way that he floats in the air and stays there over and over is, something that can't really be taught after a while. It's just God-given skill sets that that he has specifically. I don't want to say he's bounced around, but he started at Houston and has played at the University of Texas as well. So he's used to moving to different areas. I know it's both in the state of Texas, but used to going to different areas, meeting new teammates, running a new system and all of these different things, and really has excelled everywhere that he went. So I would absolutely love this if the Bucs decide, okay, we're not going to trade out and we're not going to go with a defensive player because our guy's just not on the board. I think Matthew Golden is a fantastic fit for this Buccaneers team.
4.29 speed. He's the fastest player in this year's draft. He brings it a different dimension. I know that Trey Palmer has some speed, but he's just not the receiver that Matthew Golden is. And this guy is he plays bigger than his size, 5'11", 191 pounds. Will go up and get it. He's got fantastic ability to track the deep ball. He can get yards after the catch. There's a lot to like about his game. He comes up clutch. I mean, you go back to that 4th and 13 situation in the Big 12 championship game against Arizona State. Or actually, no, that was in the playoff game. Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah. And had the touchdown right there to keep
Save their season.
save their season, exactly. And they got all the way to get deeper into the playoffs than many had expected them to, and he was a big part of that. Leading receiver, 987 yards. He had 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns at Houston as well, so he can bring that dimension as help out in special teams as a rookie. So there's a lot to like about him. The other player is Mykel Williams, the outside linebacker, edge rusher prospect out of Georgia. I'm not as high on Mykel Williams. Matter of fact, he's one of the guys we're going to be talking about today. We'll kind of get into that in a little bit. But, you look at the Georgia players. We talked about it yesterday with Jaylen Walker. And whether it's Trayvon Walker, whether it's Nolan Smith, these guys, for whatever reason, they aren't big-time sack producers at Georgia. Mm-hmm. And yet they have the ability to get more sacks at the next level. Right, so we've seen Nolan Smith record more sacks in a season with the Eagles than he did in any season at Georgia. Same thing with Trayvon Walker in Jacksonville. He's become a double-digit sacker, where that wasn't the case there. And, of course, that's what people are kind of hoping and expecting Jaylen Walker to be. He had 6.5 sacks last year for the Bulldogs as a quasi-linebacker, edge rusher, tweener kind of guy. And so we'll see. But Mykel Williams, a talented player. We'll get into his story in a little bit, but I think now we're up to 10, 11 players out of the 30 that have been recognized.
Yeah, something along those lines. The third edge rusher as well, second SEC edge rusher too, to go with Nick Scarleton from Texas A&M. And I have to say, I mean, if we're talking about the 2 Georgia edge rushers, whether it's Jaylen Walker or Mykel Williams, I liked Walker's tape a little bit more than Mykel Williams. We can break that down a little bit further as we kind of get into today's topic. But I don't know. I'm always going to trust the Bucs front office and Jason Light and all that good stuff. As Felix Schmidt says, Matthew Golden, he said before too, that he'd probably be the number 1 receiver after Evans and Godwin retire. Now Godwin's going to be here for a little bit longer because he just signed that new contract. But yeah, again, just bring in a different element to this team. And I think that's part of the issue with some of these edge rushers today that we're going to talk about is they already have the strength and physicality type of guy with Yaya Diaby and
Chris Braswell.
And Chris Braswell too. So it's like, do you necessarily want a third potential player that brings a similar skill set or just something completely different? And certainly they have that with Hassan Reddick. That's one of the, the brick walls we're kind of running into a little bit with these shocking draft prospects that the Bucs could take in the first round.
Yeah, exactly. Let's dive into it, right? We've come up with a list here. We'll kind of go through some of them. We have quite a few names to get to. If there's any players that would maybe shock or surprise you or disappoint you, let us know, and we'll try to comment on those as well. But when you look at that's the top 30 business. There we go. First round draft shockers. These are some guys that would kind of shock us a little bit if they were taken, and we'll go through some of these guys one at a time here. James Pearce Jr. out of Tennessee, the edge rusher. When you look at Pearce, 6'5", 243, and I know that we've talked about a couple of guys that are also in the 240s, Jaylen Walker, Donovan Ezeraku. But when you're 6'5", 243, you're kind of a lanky dude, right? And I think that's he can get pushed around a little bit in the run game. He's a good run defender when he's clean coming in. He'll make the tackle. But then there's also the issue of some character concerns. There was an arrest that happened. And I think with James Pearce, we've heard some character things. Sometimes teams, unfortunately, will put some stuff out that may not be true around the draft to have a player fall a little bit. That's not uncommon, although it's not exactly like above board. But there's just some things that don't scream Buccaneer about James Pearce to me.
I gotta be honest. We have to separate the two: the character issue, and then
the player and
on
the
the field, and
I love
player
the player.
person. The player, again, electricity just jumps off the tape when you watch him. The the quick dynamic speed, getting into the backfield in 2.5 seconds, like
Yeah.
that's the type of stuff that if we're talking about first round edge rushers, that's the type of stuff you see with Donovan Ezaraku.
Right.
That's the type of stuff you see with like Mike Green as well. And
Yeah.
there's a reason why. And draft boards and stocks rising and falling for all players, really, but edge rushers. Like before the season, he was considered like a top 10 pick, and then he slides a little bit, then he comes back up, and it really does come down to what do you think of him as a person? Of course, we know the Bucs value that a ton. It's tough to argue with the production. I mean, he had 10 sacks in 2023, 7.5 last season in 2024. So it dipped a little bit, but not like an insane amount by any means. All the tools are there as a pass rusher, different moves, swim move, spin move, like all that different stuff. But the arrest, the character's concerns overall, him just being like, hey, I'm a great guy, I'm a great teammate. Like you read that, and I'm sorry, I'm just not sitting here being like, you know what? I believe him because he said that. But also at the same time, I don't know him personally. I don't know all the personnel and brass over at Tennessee. I can't just be like, oh, well, he must be a terrible person because like there's one anonymous report that he's like not that good of a guy. The arrest doesn't help by any means, but I'm curious, like, do you see it as more of a shock for the Bucs because of the personality standpoint of it, or that he just wouldn't be on the board?
I think he's going to fall. I wouldn't be surprised if he falls late into the first round or even out of the first round due to the character concerns. Now, there's always one team that can stop a slide, right? If they want to take a chance on a player or they don't buy into some of the findings or whatever, where they want to be a contrarian or whatever.
Yeah.
There's that. But if he falls out of the first round, it will be because there was enough character concerns, because he does have first round talent. There's no doubt about it. Ran a 4.5, whatever at the combine. It's not the 40-yard dash speed that really matters for edge rushers. You want to look at that 10-yard split, which is pretty dynamic as well. But I think that's what would cause him to fall would be not the tape, because the tape is pretty good. It would be the person, not the player. One thing we should reference when looking at our list here that we've come up with is the fact that we're not anticipating, and you talk about a shock, we're not anticipating any offensive linemen getting drafted in the first round per se, like especially tackles, right? So they're not going to draft the tackle when you got Tristan Wirfs and Luke Gedeke. That would be an absolute waste of draft capital. They're not going to draft a running back in the first round when they have Bucky Irving and Rashad White in a contract year and Sean Tucker, right? So they're not going to draft a quarterback with Baker Mayfield and, under contract, and he's still, just turned 29, 30 years old, coming up soon. So
these are believable draft picks that
exactly. Yeah, we're removing tackles, running backs, and quarterbacks. Everything else is kind of fair game and all of that. The next guy is Jaylen Walker, and we're not going to spend a bunch of time talking about him because we talked about him yesterday. But the thing with Walker is he's a bit of a tweener, right? Is he a better linebacker? Is he an outside linebacker / edge rusher? And I think that's something you and I kind of were in unison about is, he needs some developments. The tools are there. Maybe it's a little off-putting that he didn't do any athletic testing at the combine or the pro day, but he looks athletic on tape. He looks quick and powerful on tape, right? So you give him the benefit of the doubt. The tape looks good. Mm-hmm. But, is he a jack of all trades, master of none, right? This team needs an edge rusher to throw into the mix. They also need a really good inside linebacker to throw into the mix and be Levante David's heir apparent. I'm not sure if he's ever going to be great at either one. He might be a good guy that can do both, like a joker role.
Yeah.
But I don't know that he's going to be a double-digit sacker or that he's going to be a linebacker that can develop into a Pro Bowl caliber guy because of the lack of instincts.
It feels like for the most part, players that are in between at like the first and second level with D-line / edge rusher or inside linebacker, those players don't pan out in the way that a safety that could play in the slot or a guy that played safety and corner. Or sometimes
that's a great point.
Or sometimes we've seen before as well, and this is like very old school, but like Brian Urlacher used to be a safety and then became an inside linebacker. Like you don't see that as much anymore. And extracurriculars with certain workouts and stuff like that may have helped Brian Urlacher as well.
Yeah.
But like for the most part, you don't see, and I mentioned Isaiah Simmons yesterday, and he's not the only example. Joe Tryon-Shanka as well, who I mentioned yesterday.
Yeah.
You don't see the guys that are like, because the problem is the prospects come in, and of course they're going to tell every team, I'll play anywhere. I just want to play football.
Yeah.
I love football. You tell me this on one down and then this on the next down, I'll do it. I think it's a detriment to these players. And I said this with the Bucs and Jaylen Walker. I hope they commit to him just being an edge rusher or just being an inside linebacker. But I'll take that a step further. I'll say that for all 32 NFL teams, whoever ends up taking Jaylen Walker, if you want the best out of him, pick a spot and just go for it from day one. Because what do we hear from all the time? I mean, we just heard Jason Light and Todd Bowles to a degree, but mostly Jason Light talk about Tyke Smith saying we don't want to put too much on his plate.
Right.
That's a lot to put on a plate of a guy that could be a top 15 first-round pick and say, all right, we're going to cross-train him at inside linebacker and edge rusher. It just doesn't work out a majority of the time. What happens is you start at edge rusher, you ball out there, and then we say, hey, he's so good here. Let's see how else we can use him.
Right.
Maybe we move him to the other side of the line. Maybe we have him do this, this, and that. You got to be a master at one thing, and then you could be great at karate, learn Muay Thai after you get your black belt in karate. Or whatever the case is.
I go back to what Yaya Diaby said, man. I mean, you're definitely on the right trail here, man, because we were even talking about it. It kind of frustrates me as someone who I love pass rush, I love the D line and all that, and to see Yaya Diaby flip sides from left to right, not just game to game, but series to series sometimes. And even he was saying it's frustrating because you get into a groove, you're starting to set up moves against the left tackle, and all of a sudden going against the right tackle. You have to kind of start from ground zero there, right? And to me, and Yaya even said it, you can tell he's been studying it. Trey Hendrickson is a right defensive end. Myles Garrett, is a right defensive end. Max Crosby is a left defensive end. TJ Watt is on the left side, right? Reggie White, one of the greatest to ever do it, was always on the left side. Simeon Rice, always on the right side. You have that home base that you can perfect your moves, and you can set up an opponent throughout the course of a quarter, throughout the course of a half, throughout the course of a game. And there's just so much to that. And so I love when players have a home base. I want you to be a perfectionist at your spot and develop there. It's like Warren Sapp didn't play defensive end or nose tackle.
Right.
He was a 3-tech. Derek Brooks wasn't an inside linebacker. He was a weak side linebacker, right? So I'm with you. I think that makes a ton of sense. And I hope that whoever drafts Jaylen Walker will have him commit to probably being an edge rusher, because I think that's what he does best. But he's going to need some time and development there, because he did split time between stand-up linebacker and an edge rusher at Georgia. Let's go back to our list here. And Mykel Williams. Okay, so Mykel Williams from Georgia. He did have a foot injury, as noted here by Supply and Demand. Like Mykel, he was playing hurt last year. He was. That is a fair.
Yes.
But to me, the tools are there. And when I watch the film, I like what I see in the run game. He's a very good run defender. And I just think that this team, he reminds me an awful lot of Chris Braswell, right? The player they just drafted. So he reminds me a lot of Chris Braswell. And, he can get after the quarterback. He's got a similar build to Braswell. Even Yaya Diaby, you can kind of make that claim. Not that you wouldn't want another Yaya Diaby, but again, he reminds me a little bit more of Braswell. The sack production is a little scary. 4.5 sacks in 2022, 4.5 sacks the next year, and then 5 sacks last year. And is that what he is? Is that all he can be?
Yeah.
Right. A little bit of a stagnancy there. You didn't see that even with Yaya Diaby. His last year at Louisville, he had 9 sacks. Right. And it just kind of shows you development. It like the arrow's pointing up. And so that's my knock on him is I didn't see any real ascendancy. And sometimes the player's production tells you exactly who they are. Sometimes what you see is what you get. And the player's kind of already at their ceiling. And I'm not saying that's the case with him, but you're having to make a projection here. You're having to project that he can be a double-digit sacker at the next level. And if he's not, then I mean, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka topped out at 5 sacks, right? Is this what this team wants? Another 5-sack guy in JTS that was a great athlete? I don't know. So I like guys that have shown me they can do it. And it doesn't mean that they're going to do it at the next level, but kind of like what
There's
Jason Light says, it's a great place to start. Yes.
Yeah, it's a starting point. And sure, there are some things to like with the physicality. He never gives up on a play, which is nice. I think it's also helpful too, especially for this Bucs team, that even though they want ball hawks and they want to get home with a 4-man pass rush, Todd Bowles' defense is always, the foundation of it has always been stop the run and let's set him up for these crazy blitzes on third down, whatever the case may be. So it is very helpful that he stops the run. But I don't know, just seeing him play, it's a little bit of a wait and see approach. Like, he's not that quick off the ball. He's got one good move with a rip going into the inside. But half of his sacks, I feel like he's engaged with the blocker, and then the quarterback goes, oh, no one's open. I'm running up the middle.
Yes.
And then he makes the catch. He makes the tackle, excuse me. Because the quarterback just happens to run into his gap. And, you know, good awareness, and it helps with the run game when you can kind of get off a block and get your arm on a guy.
Right.
I just don't think you're going to make that play in the NFL. Like, if Lamar Jackson's running up that middle, you ain't making the tackle. It's just not going to happen.
If it's an NFL pocket passer, the ball's going to be gone, right?
Yes,
and if it's a guy like Mahomes or a guy like Lamar Jackson, they're going to escape you, right? You're probably not going to
corral them. They're likely going to go to the outside more. And I mean, he is an outside runner, but sometimes if they cut to the inside, you know, he's there, Johnny on the spot. I just don't know if he has the quickness. One, because like, these hustle plays, yes, they're nice. You're never giving up on a play. But when it takes 6 or 7 seconds, you're not going to have that time in the NFL.
No,
you're going to have it in college football, but you're not going to have that in the NFL. So if you're already having issues kind of getting off of tackles, if you can't out-muscle them in the first place, well, you're not going to have a chance if you're lining up against Tristan Wirfs, if he's not on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, or going up against Lane Johnson, whoever that case may be. So, I don't know. To me, that was like a big concern, and I hate to say it, but I think Williams may have one of the top chances to kind of be a bust if he were to go to the Bucs at 19. But
and I like other edge rushers better, and we'll see who ends up being on the board at number 19. But I mean, I might take Matthew Golden over Mykel Williams at this point, and then try to get Femi Oladejo or something in the second or third round, because I think he has just as much upside as Williams does, to be honest, and you're not spending a first-round pick on that guy. Shemar Stewart, probably one of my absolute least favorite players in this draft. Okay, he was our cover guy today.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I am big on production. Show me you can do it. This is a prime example. This to me reeks of a bigger, more athletic Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. Close, but no cigar, right? This is a player that had 1.5 sacks, not just last year, every year, at Texas A&M. He's had 3 years of 1.5 sacks. And the tackles for loss, I'll read it from his freshman to, through the last 3 years here. 4 tackles for loss, 2 tackles for loss, and 6 tackles for loss. He has 1 forced fumble. And to me, I'm sorry, I stay away from this guy like he will electrocute you. I was not that impressed with him at the combine. Listen, I have done this for 30 years. I have seen Marcus Jones. I have seen Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. Do not give me the athlete. I don't want the looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane guy. I've seen that. I've seen it too many times here. Eric Curry, right? I go back to the mid-'90s. So to me, absolutely not. I know that they've had him in. I think he was one of the 30 visits. Was he one of 30 visits? Let's check and see. No, yes, he was. Shemar Turner. I take that back. Shemar Turner was in for a visit, not Shemar Stewart. Shemar Turner. Too many Shemars here. Shemar Turner is the defensive tackle from Texas A&M. I'm not really thrilled about him either. I think he's a second-round guy. There's other defensive tackles I like better. But I would take Shemar Turner over Shemar Stewart in a heartbeat. I just think I don't care about the measurables. I don't care about the size and the speed. Show me you can do it. Get to the quarterback and get him down. And the tape that this guy has is frustrating to watch.
Yeah.
And my God, if they draft him, holy hell, Jason Light, I will be on your ass on draft night if you draft this guy. Because you just got rid of a guy named Joe Tryon-Shoyinka.
Yeah.
So, no, thank you.
To be honest, I hate to be a jerk, but like his tape was boring. It was
Yes.
boring. I
Yes.
didn't find anything like interesting about
Gaines
it at all.
Adams.
Tom
Thank
Bucks
you.
fan
Yeah.
with a good point about Gaines Adams, and before I was comparing some of the Georgia players that we've mentioned. When it comes to the Texas A&M guys, I think this guy is like amazing, but I would
Yeah.
easily take Nick Scourton
I would too.
over who we were just talking about with
Yeah.
Shemar
Shamar
Stewart. So
Stewart.
like
Yeah.
it's not
Scorton's
even
better. So Scorton and I don't
Scorton's
like it.
better.
I don't like him, but
But
yeah, we'll talk.
you can at
We'll,
least like tolerate him. You can
yes.
tolerate him, and you
Yes.
could see why Tampa Bay would be interested in him at least a
Yeah.
little bit. Stewart, I don't see any of the reason why he should be their pick at
Yeah.
19. The production's not there. The tape doesn't really stand out to me by any means. So that would just be a complete. The only benefit we would get out of that, and who knows, like again, this is why Jason Light's great at what he does, and the whole front
Right.
office. At least we'd get a great reaction video out of it, like
Yeah.
during our draft show. That at least we can point to that as positive.
That's true. Yeah. So Nick Scorton, he's the other guy from Texas A&M. Now he was a late addition. He was an NIL guy that left Purdue. He actually led the Big Ten in sacks, and I liked him better at Purdue than I did last year. For whatever reason, they had him put on like 25 pounds last year, and he played too heavy. He missed way too many sacks. He looked out of shape. He's apparently dropped 30 pounds now. Let's see where Nick Scorton, where he weighed in at the combine. And maybe they're bringing him in because he was committed to losing the weight. He's 6'3", 257 at the combine. So he was about 280 pounds playing at Texas A&M last year. And that was way too heavy. Long arms, 33 inches, good production at Purdue. He had 10 sacks as a sophomore, including 50 tackles, 15 tackles for loss, 3 passes broken up, and a forced fumble. Then his last year was this past season where he was first team all SEC, and he had 5 sacks, 14 tackles for loss. He's a high motor guy. He is he's a try hard guy. He's everything you want in a player, but he reminds me too much of Yaya Diaby. And I think Yaya is actually a better athlete. So to me, and I know that he's kind of considered a fringe, probably a second round guy, but I've seen him in the latter part of some mocks. And again, I like a lot of other edge rushers better than Nick Scorton. Would not move my needle at all if they drafted him, especially in the first round. I think it'd be terrible value. Even trading down to 25 or 26 and getting this guy, I think, no thank you.
No, so transparency for everybody watching and listening to the show. In my Bucks battle plan, I do have the Bucks drafting Scorton with my first round pick at 28. So that's the thing is I traded further back. So it was at 28. It was not at 19. Let's remember, he's also only 20 years old. So like there is still some rawness to his game. I think there's a lot that you can develop there. And while there are some similarities to Yaya Diaby, I think he already has more pass rushing moves than Yaya Diaby. He's got a spin move that he likes to go to a little bit. We don't see anything from that with Yaya. And Yaya did say he is working with pass rushing coaches, so we'll see what happens this year for sure. But I mean, the production was there with Purdue. It dropped a little bit with Texas A&M. But as you mentioned, the fact that he did put on that much weight, let's see if he gets back to kind of his original weight or just less than what he had, if that can help out overall. He is strong. He does have a motor. I don't hate the pass rushing moves. And again, that's why he's a fringe first rounder and not a top 15 type of guy.
You know what's crazy is when you look at some of these superhero defenses, right? Like Georgia, right? They've got just a plethora of guys. South Carolina this year, right? They got TJ Sanders and Tonka Hemingway inside. You got Kyle Kennard on the outside. You got Nick Amonwari. You got Odell Fortune, that right corner. You got Demetrius Knight at linebacker. Texas A&M, right? They've got 3 what people would call stud defensive linemen, right? You've got Scorton, you've got Shemar Turner, defensive tackle, and then Shemar Stewart, who's the other defensive end, right? Their sack production was absolute crap at Texas A&M. I mean, Scorton was their leading sacker with 5. Shemar Turner had 2 sacks. Shemar Stewart had 1.5. I mean, it's like they have these guys that are touted as first possible second round picks. And like, I just don't see it. I don't see the pass rush at all. I'm sorry. I'm much more impressed with the defensive lines of South Carolina, Georgia, Ole Miss, right? When you Ole Miss, you've got Princely Umanmalian, you've got Jared Ivey, you've got Walter Nolan, you've got JJ Pegues inside. I mean, that's another one right in the SEC. I just think Texas A&M had a crap defensive line. They're overrated players, in my opinion. And it's just the way I see it. And so Scorton, they would have to trade down and get a haul. I mean, a haul for trading down to where I would feel good about making this guy the first Buccaneer selected on Sunday. Or not Sunday, but Thursday. I don't know. I don't love him. There's other edge rushers I would be more impressed with, but he's on our list here. So let's continue to go through here. So Kenneth Grant, defensive tackle out of Michigan. I think Mason Graham is kind of the star at Michigan, right, in terms of their defensive tackle. You have Josiah Stewart, the edge rusher there. With Grant, he's nose tackle only, 6'4", 334 pounds. And so he's pigeonholed, really. He's not really a three tech. He's a nose tackle. Well, Vita Vea is your Pro Bowl, highly paid nose tackle. And at least Logan Hall, when he comes in, can kind of play three, or he can play nickel. With Kenneth Grant, I think what you're getting is a big nose tackle who would just be a rotational player with Vita Vea, and really couldn't line up with Vita, because then you've got kind of two nose tackles. And he's got a hot and cold motor. He's not a great pass rusher. So that, to me, I would be disappointed. There's other defensive tackles I like. Like, I'd rather have Walter Nolan from Ole Miss at lower in the first round, a guy that has some pass rush ability rather than Kenneth Grant.
I actually enjoyed watching Grant's tape. And sure, like, maybe he benefited from some of the other hosses on Michigan's defensive line. So for me, it was just more of, well, you're not replacing Vita Vea just yet. And Vita Vea is going to be the main guy in there. So are you going to spend a first-round draft pick on a guy that can only play in one spot and just is not going to start? And, even if Vita Vea does get hurt, which, he did before, like back in 2020, and he missed a game, or he missed some time last year. Remember, he got hurt in the first half of that game against the Lions. There are more than one ways to replace Vita Vea. And Logan Hall is a good example. Greg Gaines being in the mix, and he was big in that game against the Lions as well, with his ability to play like 65% of the snaps. If you're drafting a guy that can only play one position, well, you better be like Ndamukong Suh or Warren Sapp at that position. And I don't think he's necessarily that, besides the fact that I think he can do a really good job of getting into the backfield and stopping the run and things of that nature. But we've seen the Bucs rely a lot on their defensive tackles over the last 2 years to get to the quarterback. And maybe this team, because of the inefficiencies that they've had getting to the quarterback with that front four, they're probably asking a little bit more of Vita Vea and Kalijah Kancey than many other teams do with their defensive tackles. Vita Vea led the team in sacks 2 years ago. Kalijah certainly did last season with 7.5. If he's not bringing that pass rushing talent, it's tough to justify drafting a guy just to play in one spot and be a backup at that spot for really the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and this is such a deep defensive tackle draft, too, that I don't know if the value is there this year in the first round, unless you're getting a guy that really just falls and you feel really good about getting a guy in the top 15 in terms of your board, and then you trade down, he ends up being there at 25 or 26. Then I could kind of see it. It just, to me, there's only so many teams that have needs at defensive tackle. And there's going to be, maybe in the fourth round, a guy that has a fringe second or third round grade, where you can really get some really good value by drafting a defensive tackle later in the draft. You might get an undrafted free agent that you had as a fifth round guy on your board, right? So, I mean, there's that potential there as well. The other thing too is I go back and I look at the number of defensive tackles that the Buccaneers actually interviewed at the combine, right? And it's they had 4 formal interviews that we could ascertain. Toledo's Darius Alexander, good player, had a good Senior Bowl. South Carolina defensive tackle Tonka Hemingway, we both like him. He's more of like a flashy, athletic guy. Utah defensive lineman Junior Tafana, and Clemson's Peyton Page. Those are the 4 guys that had formal interviews with the team. Really, outside of Alexander, those 3 players, Hemingway, Tufana, and Page, are day 3 guys.
Yeah.
And then they only had 3 other informal visits with defensive tackles that we could ascertain: Tyler Batty, Warren Brinson, and Eric Gregory. So they didn't really spend a lot of time with defensive tackles there, which tells me they're probably not going to invest the defensive tackle selection out of their 6 picks in this year's draft. Or if they do, probably going to be a day 3 guy rather than a player in the first 3 rounds.
Yeah, seems like that'll be the case. I mean, there's always positions that the Bucs prefer and are more involved in each season, depending on the position. It varies from season to season, depending on who is available. So if you can get a defensive tackle in the 3rd or 4th round, when, again, it's not the first position of need on this defense, let alone this entire team, because of who you have. So, I think like DT, I think a second linebacker after finding like an initial linebacker, I think very much would be in play as well for Tampa Bay, and that's what makes the draft fun. You never really know how they're going to address it.
Yep. Well, we appreciate our draft picks, as we call them, our Pewter Platinum members: Scott Federico, Rachel Gordon, Noah Parr, Scotty J, Dave Anderson, Hezo 813, Ash Fishpool, Joel Elrican, Sam, John Dale Morris, Zach Brannigan, RP89, Eric McMillan, Connor For Reals, Zach Jarvis, Kevin Thomas, and Mario Thomas. Thank you so much for becoming Pewter Report TV channel members, and more importantly, Pewter Platinum members. If you would like to join the ranks and help out our channel here, you can do so by supporting our efforts and becoming a Pewter Report TV channel member. It's really easy to do. Just hit the join button on the front page of Pewter Report TV, and you'll have these options pop up here. And we've got 4 different options: Pewter People, Pewter Pro, Pewter Premier, and Pewter Platinum. Find the one that fits your budget the best. They come with different levels of perks: $3.99 a month, $6.99 a month, $9.99, and then $24.99. So we greatly appreciate all of the support we get from our Pewter Report TV channel members. And if you'd like to get your business some more business, you can help by doing that, and also aligning with Pewter Report. We've got a couple of different ways where we can promote your business on the Pewter Report podcast. We can also do that with our high traffic website, pewterreport.com, and our social media channels. We have over 110,000 combined social media followers between X, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So for sponsorship opportunities, drop me an email, I should say, at sr@pewterreport.com, sr@pewterreport.com, and we will be happy to have a conversation with you. We'll be having a conversation tomorrow with Bucs quarterback Michael Pratt. That's on tap for the 4 o'clock hour. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about Josh Grizzard and Baker Mayfield and his battle with Kyle Trask that's looming. What he learned last year behind the scenes, coming on right at the end of the preseason. He spent last summer with the Packers, going to camp, and also going through the preseason with Green Bay. And find out what he's been doing this offseason, and also pick his brain a little bit about what happened last year in the draft for him. A very interesting guy. I had a chance to get to know him in the locker room last year, and he will be one of the featured guys in the training camp battles to watch. Cornerback's going to be one of them, nickel corner probably, and quarterback, backup quarterback, is going to be another one. And then on Thursday at 4 o'clock, Jason Light press conference reaction. We'll be down at One Buccaneer Place on Thursday with all of the coverage on social media. We'll have some clips to show you here on the Pewter Report podcast as well. And we'll be talking inside linebackers on Friday for our Pewter Insider Show. That's at 1:30. Matt Matera and I will be doing this exclusive Pewter Report podcast, as we do each Friday, with our Pewter Premier and Platinum members. So make sure that you sign up and become one of those members, and you can have access to our chat on Friday at 1:30. And then don't forget, we've got a very special show coming up soon. It will be April 24th and 26th. It'll be the draft. And we're going to be having 3 days of wall-to-wall draft coverage with our Pewter Report live draft show. It's going to be streamed on YouTube, Facebook, and X. We'll also have it on the front page of pewterreport.com. Wall-to-wall, minute-to-minute coverage of the draft, all 3 rounds, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday from the team headquarters. We'll be getting reaction live from those press conferences that Jason Light and Todd Bowles have, as well as the first-round draft pick, if this team makes it first-round pick. And that'll be on Friday at 7 o'clock, and we'll be rolling at, 7 o'clock on Thursday is when the show kicks off, 1 hour before the draft. And then on Friday, it'll be 6 o'clock before the 7 o'clock start. Then we'll be on at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern time on Saturday as the draft kicks off day 3 at noon. So make sure you join us. Make sure you bookmark the time for April 24th through the 26th for a Pewter Report live draft show. That's always a fun time.
It is. It's a Pewter Report marathon. You get to spend almost the whole weekend with us as we break down every pick. And then there's also more and more elements to it. Like, for example, as Scott, you were just mentioning, like Thursday, we react to the pick. And then the next day we get to speak to whoever gets drafted by the Bucs, which is fun. And hearing Jason Light's comments on it, because it's the first time you can kind of like reveal information, like how we found out about Kalijah Cansey and all that good stuff. And then we do get to speak to the other players that get drafted too, but that's via Zoom. So we'll usually react to it, and then one of us will go into the Zoom interview with the prospect, and then they'll come back and tell us kind of all about it and all that stuff. So yes, we will be at the Bucs facility for it. I saw something in the chat about that we might be at a different spot, but no, we are in the Bucs building for the show. They're kind enough to give us a room that we do it from, and always exciting, always a lot of fun, and looking forward to it again in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that our Thursday isn't ruined by them drafting one of these players.
Yeah,
Let's
right.
continue. Defensive tackle Jordan Burch from Oregon. Again, we kind of talked a little bit about the defensive tackle position with Kenneth Grant. Burch, he's got 1 year of production really at Oregon. And again, a hot and cold motor. He's a defensive tackle who weighed in at 279. He played about 20 pounds heavier, and almost kind of like the exact opposite of Nick Scorton. Scorton played too heavy and lost a bunch of weight that probably helped his cause when it comes to the pre-draft evaluation, because he's more like a defensive end or an outside linebacker now. But with Jordan Burch, kind of the opposite. He played closer to 300 pounds. Now he's down to 279. I mean, we're talking Kalijah Cansey weight here. And again, the motor kind of runs hot and cold. There's some stuff to like on the tape and some stuff not to like. Your thoughts on Jordan Burch, Matt?
Yeah, long career as well. Began it at South Carolina and then spent the last 2 years at Oregon. So kind of that weight fluctuation, because he was a defensive tackle at South Carolina, where he played defensive end over at Oregon. 8.5 sacks last year. Kind of hard to argue against that production. I didn't mind his tape either, but I just view him as more of a second or third round type of pick than a guy that you would take in the first round, especially at 19. And if he's going to play defensive tackle, I'm just not a huge fan of the Bucs going defensive tackle in the first round, just based on what they need. So to me, it's more of the positional need that would be most shocking to me than necessarily the player. Yeah,
exactly. I'm with you. Another player that is on our list is cornerback Azariah Thomas out of Florida State. It had a pretty good Senior Bowl. Like, that was really kind of my first exposure to him. You've watched a lot of more Florida State footage than I do, more Florida State games. The tape is good. Not much of a ball hawk. Doesn't really check that box for Todd Bowles. Right. But man, he ran a 4.58 at the combine. I mean, we're kind of fretting a little bit about Kobe Bryant's 4.53, but he's a press man corner with a 4.58 time. We're talking kind of almost Jonathan Banks slow for the Buccaneers. And yet I've seen him at the end of some of the first round and some mock drafts. He's probably going to be a second round pick. It just scares me a little bit with that speed. Is he fast enough to play? Is he going to make enough plays in the ball? The track record isn't there.
Yeah, a slow corner can be detrimental to the player that runs the slow 40 and trying to make it in the NFL. his overall stat production is kind of interesting, right? Because he only has 2 career interceptions in 3 seasons.
Mhm.
Last season was just kind of difficult to judge overall because Florida State was such a terrible team, especially like offensively. They were
Yeah.
scoring 10 points a game, so teams didn't really need to attack Florida State's defense if they didn't want to after building a lead because they were always playing with the lead, and that's why Florida State only had 2 wins or whatever the case was. Now, 2 seasons ago, when they went undefeated in the regular season, he had 5 pass breakups, so he does a good job in tight coverage, one-on-one press man, like we talked about. He had a great one-handed interception in the Senior Bowl during one of the practices. I thought he held himself very well against some of the wide receiver talent that we saw at the Senior Bowl too. But again, it's one thing going up against wide receivers, working with quarterbacks that they've never played with before.
Yeah.
And it's another when you're going up against some of the best wide receivers in the league. Now, certainly, wherever he gets drafted, they're not going to put him against Tyreek Hill or Mike Evans or whoever, on day one. The speed is a major concern that I think knocks him out of the first round, but I think he's got a lot of other good qualities about him that he can be successful, but he's got to work on that speed for sure.
For sure. And there is a comment here that I do want to address. This is from Tom Bucs fan. Rondé Barber was 4.66 in the 40-yard dash in 1997. I believe that's correct. However, I've had Rondé tell me that he had a hamstring injury that slowed down his 40-yard dash time because Rondé's not a 4.66 guy. He wasn't the fastest corner. Wasn't Donnie Abraham fast, but fast enough, right? And the interesting thing about Barber was that he won the national title in the 55-meter hurdles as a senior in high school. So, I mean, we're not talking like he won state or he won regional. He won the national 55-meter hurdle. And I'm sure that the size, 5'10", 184 pounds, as well as the slower 40-yard dash time, it caused the stock to drop to the third round. There's no doubt about it. But the dude had 15 interceptions in 3 years at Virginia. So he can really fly, and he had a career best time of 7.18 seconds, and he was timed at 14.05 seconds in the 110-meter hurdles, and he also won the 4-group AAA hurdles title for the indoor and outdoor track. So I mean, and I had Rondé Barber because I too once called him a slow corner. In Buccaneer magazine back in the day, and Rondé had to confront me about it, and I had to own up to it. And he's like, "Do you want me to show you the medals, dude? Because I got the medals at home." I'm like, "No, I believe you." But this is like the 90s. This is before Wikipedia, before you could do all these research,
Right.
and all that stuff. I didn't have this information at my fingertips. Just reading some milk hyper or some draft manual that somebody else put out, and that was the knock on him. So we'll see. That 4.58 is not a killer. It just, in this day and age, when you've got fast receivers, it can be. He's got to be in the right system and the right scheme for sure. We'll see. Let's round out the list here with a couple of other names. These are more on the offensive side of the ball here. Yeah. There we go. Gray Zabel from North Dakota State. At this point in time, I mean, I like him a lot. I think he dominated at the Senior Bowl. He's a great player. But at this point in time, Matt, if they were to draft Gray Zabel, then what do you do with Ben Bredeson? You just paid this guy 3 years. I know 2 years is pretty much guaranteed, but are you paying him $7 million to be a backup? Don't you want your first round pick to see the field in a year when the Super Bowl window is open? Like where would this guy play? I mean, you almost have to start him, but then what do you do with Ben Bredeson?
It's just the greatest depth in the history of football along the offensive line.
Right.
Yeah, just the Bredesen signing of a 3-year deal takes this off the board.
Yeah.
Because it's awesome. Yeah. Zabel has a friendship with Cody Mauch, and he's spoken with Mauch a lot, like during this whole process. So
yeah,
naturally, there's locker room chemistry right then and there. But it just, for everything that we like about him, it just does not make sense with the signing of Ben Bredeson unless they really want some insurance, along that offensive line. And They want a little bit more development from Elijah Klein before they're ready to be like, all right, you're our first guy off the bench if something happens to the
Yeah.
interior offensive line. So that's really all I could think of. Again, if it's a defensive player versus Gray Zabel, it's going to be a defensive player
Yeah.
all day. But yeah, it would be a shock.
Yeah, and to me, like you said, it's the multi-year deal that Bredesen got. If it was a 1-year deal, I could see it, right? Also, too, it's the dollar amount. If it was like a 1-year deal or even like a 2-year deal at $5 million per, all right, $5 million for a backup center guard, that's not too bad. $7 million is a little rich, right?
Right.
That to me, that's like, hey, Ben, we're committing to you when you're signing this contract. We're thinking of you as we're sorry, I got the wrong graphic. We're thinking of you as our starting left guard, at least for this year, probably the next year too, right? That's what they're saying. The last guy on the list is a tight end from Michigan, Cortland Loveland. To me, I think Tyler Warren is the best tight end in this draft class. I believe he's going to be gone by the time Tampa Bay's on the clock. I know that Loveland has some fans for sure. At 6'5", 245, he's got a build that reminds me of Cade Otton a little bit. And he's a better receiver than Cade Otton, but I don't know that he's a better blocker than Cade Otton. So where does another Cade Otton type player help this team so much? And this team's also talking about extending Cade Otton. Then why would you draft the tight end in the first round when you want to be a 3-wide receiver team? So why are you drafting a tight end in the first round if you have plans on extending Cade Otton? They like Cade Otton. They like his development. And I think Cade deserved a contract extension after last year. If it was Tyler Warren, who's a bigger 6'6", 255, 260-pound guy that is more dynamic as a receiver, then I can see that, because I think that's more like Gronk and Cam Brate, right? Mm-hmm. Where to me, Cortland Loveland is probably in between. He's not Gronk, but he's probably better than Cam Brate, where Tyler Warren might have some Gronk to him. He looks like a stud.
I haven't even thought about the idea of the Bucs drafting a tight end in the first round that is not named Tyler Warren. To me, that's just insanity. I mean, you have Cade Otton for at least this season, and if an extension does happen, it makes even less sense. Payne Durham showed some flashes when Otton was injured and showed that he could be a red zone threat. Devin Culp had a nice game, at the end of the season. So you have a lot of these young tight ends that are under contract for a couple of more seasons outside of Cade Otton. It just, I don't know. To go with a tight end that's not Tyler Warren in the first round, that would be probably just as head scratching as some of the other players that we talked about today. That makes no sense.
Yeah, 6'5.5", 256 is what he weighed in at the combine. He played around 260. He's just a bigger dude, right? I mean, that's like Gronk was a big guy as well. So I'm with you. I think that if you're gonna draft a tight end, let it be Tyler Warren in the first round. I could make that argument. I could see that the logic in that. Not so much with Cortland Loveland, who's a good player, but if this team needed a tight end, I'd say yeah, sure. But I just don't think I don't think that value would be there for the Buccaneers to go that route in the first round and get and draft another tight end that is not as dynamic as Tyler Warren is. But speaking of value and dynamic, those are two words that could be used to describe Heritage Isles Golf and Country Club. That's right. That's the 3 best rated best business of 2023, ranked in the top 3 best value courses in the Tampa, St. Petersburg area by Golf Advisor. Give them a call for tee times. The weather is great, folks. 813-907-7447. Highly encourage you to try out Heritage Isles Golf and Country Club. It's in the New Tampa area, just off of Bruce B. Downs. Easy to get to off of 75. So Heritage Isles Golf and Country Club. You can join the country club if you'd like, or it's open to the public. So it's got a great value either way, whether you are a member or whether you are someone coming in just off the street and want to play a great round of golf. Do it at Heritage Isle Golf and Country Club. And last but not least, I wanted to let everybody know about Briar Greaves Insurance. Protecting your assets starts with a company that you can count on. Homeowners, auto, flood, boat, and business insurance. Work with an independent agent that you can trust. For me, that's John Greaves. That's Briar's son. Known the Greaves family for a while now. The late, great Mark Cook introduced me to Briar Greaves. And what I love about him is anytime that I have questions about my insurance policy, I can get my insurance agent on the phone or via text or email within minutes. They're responsive. I'm not calling a 1-800 number, waiting on hold for 20 minutes, and then talking to somebody I don't even know who doesn't know me. And so there is value in that. There's also value in letting a company like Briar Greaves do all of the legwork for you and shopping for the best homeowners, the best auto rates, the best flood, the best boaters, and the best business insurance rates. Give them a call and say, I want the best rate. And they're going to give you all of the options and do all the legwork and the research for you, whether it's Geico, whether it is Travelers. They serve as many different insurance companies under their Briar Greaves Insurance umbrella. So there's a lot of great ways where you can save money. This is one of them. Contact Briar Greaves Insurance. Give them a call at 813-876-4166 or visit them on the web at briargreavesinsurance.com. That's BRIERGRIEVES insurance.com.
Before we wrap up the show, we have a $2 super chat from Meets McGee. Thank you very much. Who says, is Mike Green off the Bucs board?
I don't know. I haven't seen the Bucs board. I don't know that he is, but it's a little all quiet on the Western Front. And there have been some reported character issues with Mike Green. I don't know. I'm sure the team has done their due diligence. I don't know what the findings of those have been. He was in our first mock draft going to the Buccaneers, number 19. I don't know if he's off the board or not because of the potential character concerns, and we see how the Buccaneers gravitate towards high character guys. We think there are better options and alternatives. If they end up drafting him, guess what it means? It means Jason Light, Todd Bowles, they've done their due diligence, the Bucs scouts, and they've given this guy their stamp of approval. He's a hell of a player.
Yeah, the talent's all there with him. I mean, yeah, you could argue he had even a little bit more of a better Senior Bowl than Donovan Ezaraku did.
Yeah.
I mean, Green didn't even practice the third day because he was so good the first 2 days. So it's certainly not a talent issue when it comes to it. By the way, as we finish today's show, we got a great episode tomorrow as Bucs quarterback Michael Pratt will be joining us. We got a lot to ask him. Jason Light press conference reaction is Thursday, plus we got the Pewter Insider on Friday talking about the inside linebacker position. That's for Pewter Platinum and Premier members. In the meantime, if you're not already doing so, please follow us on our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram. We are at Pewter Report, and our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment. We just got over 18,000 subscribers recently, so thanks again for all of that. And now we're moving to 19,000. But that'll do it for us on today's show. For Scott Reynolds, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching. And we'll see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.